Alright. Just to do a quick breakdown of the Evander Holyfield situation, I think it needs to be addressed because it's not being addressed thoroughly and properly by boxing fans and pundits at large. This past event, a lot of aspersions are being cast at Evander for his performance against Vitor Belfort at this event. Honestly, I have a lot of criticism of Evander Holyfield, but it's for vastly different reasons. It's not as age-related as they're all trying to make it seem. Evander's 58, yes. He's kept himself looking in good physical condition, yes. But physical condition and mental condition are two completely different things. One of the issues I've always had with Evander Holyfield, going back to the middle of his career when he was still in the prime of his life, he's lazy. Now, it's not to say that he's not a workhorse. He gets in the trenches, he'll gut out fights. I don't mean lazy in that sense. I mean lazy in the sense that with all the history and experience that he brings into the ring, he doesn't like to pull from it. If you go back and look at some of his big fights, win or lose, the Riddick Bowe fights, the Foreman fights, Michael Moore fights, all these fights that he's had throughout his career, the Lennox Lewis fights. A lot of the time when he was in a very difficult competition with a very high level Hall of Fame caliber opponent, the fight was made harder than it had to be, not because of size differential. It was made difficult because Evander doesn't want to be bothered with going into the toolbox. He's been boxing since he was 8 years old. Technique-wise, in spots, you go back and watch some of these fights, you'll see him know how to position himself, adjust defensively, roll with shots, slip counters, change angles and come inside to deliver counter punch combinations. But what he does is he'll do it for a little spurt and then he gets tired of it. And then he wants to go back to just working the body, slugging, exchanging punches, imposing his will. He has the ability to dissect his opponent. He doesn't want to be bothered doing it. And for somebody that's been boxing since 8 years old, you should not shy away from being a technician that much. That's an issue. It's not age-related. That's something that he's always done throughout his entire career. So what happens in this fight? Number one, he overlooks his opponent. It doesn't matter how old you get. Being prepared is something you can always be. And having control over your body is something you can always have. Where he lost a fight was his underestimation of Vitor. He looked at Vitor, oh, this is a guy, he's coming into my sport. I want to go into his sport because that's not what I do. But he's coming into my sport. And so he starts looking at it in an entitlement sense. Boxing is my birthright. And he's coming into boxing, so there's no way he's going to beat me. Overlooking the fact that this guy is disciplined, he's mentally dialed in, he knows what he's doing, he's the kind of person that takes up a craft and excels at it. Rather than looking at what he's bringing to the table, you're going off of what you expect. So now Vitor comes in, dialed in, ready to go, and you're coming in there like, I'm just going to go half speed because this isn't his sport, so he can't beat me. Mistake number one. Then once he gets in the ring, look at the conditioning. Now that's all on you. Referee stoppage and all that can be argued, but that all comes behind your imbalance. What are you doing throwing hooks and dropping to the ground? What kind of body control is that? This is your sport. This is what you do. You've been doing this since 8 years old. So what are you doing throwing hooks and falling to the ground? You think you would ever see Mayweather or any other long-time boxer, somebody who's been boxing since a child? I don't care if he's 98. You know how to throw a check hook. You know how to throw a counter hook or overhand right, and you're going to throw it with balance. This is supposed to be you teaching him your sport. And you're throwing punches and falling to the ground because you can't even balance yourself. Then you get caught walking in and you get caught off balance again, and that's how you got dropped with the right hand. It wasn't a power shot. He had no balance to speak of. Those 2 slips and knockdowns are what caused the referee to lean towards a stoppage when he was starting to hook off when you stood up. The punches weren't landing, but when the referee looked at what happened before that, he's like, okay, maybe I should stop it. That's on you. You had the ability to prevent that stoppage before it ever happened. That's the criticism that nobody's throwing at Evander. It's not age. Don't give him that cop-out. He could have done better if it was 65 years old. That was about his mental approach to the fight, and it should not be reflective of licensing for other fighters around that age. Because Mike would certainly do better. Shannon will do better. There's plenty of other fighters in that age group that will do much better than that. It wasn't even like an attrition thing where he has too many miles on him, and so they got into later rounds that he didn't have any more stamina to give, and he just got broken down. No, this is a guy throwing wild punches and falling to the ground looking like a complete clown. That's under preparation and underestimation of your opponent. That's what Evander was guilty of. Not age. So that's what needs to be sung. And Vitor, I'm a huge fan of Vitor because people don't understand how psychologically strong he is. He's mentally strong, extremely intelligent. And I hope he gets one of those big fights.
Now for a break.
We'll see what happens.